Well, welcome to this community chat, which is the third in a series of discussions about Thrive Montgomery 2050, which is the name for the update to the general plan, for the 30-year general plan that we're working on. So this chat specifically is for the diverse economy section or chapter of the plan. I think we are at this point outnumbering the participants, but I've got 3 staff members who are working closely with me on this section of the plan, and that is Corinne Blackford, Carrie McCarthy, and Lauren Stam. And then we've got some other of our colleagues from the planning department to help with this chat. So, you know, before we start, I do want to just acknowledge that, you know, that we're living in a very unique time, challenging time. We're struggling with the pandemic, the police violence, the lots of racial inequities, and definitely the disproportionate effects that these are all having on especially people in communities of color. These issues definitely have economic dimensions. So I just wanted to invite our participants to share a word or two in the chat window about how these events may have affected your interactions with the economy, the local or the national economy. And, you know, even if we don't get to them in this discussion, this chats will be recorded along with the audio and video. So we'll be able to refer back to it as we continue to work on the plan, and just in general as we do our, you know, daily work in the planning department. So brief kind of housekeeping about Zoom, the technology that we're using that most people are probably familiar with. Actually, I would venture to guess that most people are probably more familiar with it than I am, and probably some of our colleagues, because we tend to use Teams. This is a bit new for us, so please bear with us as we kind of learn this new technology for having these virtual meetings. But so just to go over some of the parts of Zoom, you can type comments or questions in the chat box at the bottom. You can select Montgomery Planning from the drop-down list, and that way you can send us a private message if you don't want everybody else to see it. This event's going to be recorded and posted on our website, thrivemontgomery.com, and all the chat conversations will be shared with planning staff who are working on Thrive Montgomery 2050, so we can take all the comments into account. Everyone will be muted throughout the meeting. If you have a question or comment, please raise your hand. But you can do so by clicking on participants at the bottom, or by pressing *9 if you've joined by phone. When we call on you, you can unmute yourself by clicking unmute at the bottom of your screen, or by pressing *6 if you've joined by phone. You can post comments and questions in the chat at any time, and the chats will be, as we've said, visible to everyone participating unless you select a specific participant to see it. Obviously, we ask that comments are respectful and don't have any profane or racist language, in which case they will be dismissed. If you've read the plan, hopefully you've gotten a chance to look at it. We'd love to hear the draft of the plan. We'd love to hear your thoughts, what you like, what you don't like, what we've missed, and what could be better. We'd want to hopefully keep this informal and fun. And I believe Lauren has actually already posted. If you don't have it opened up and would like to, I'm referring to the draft of the plan, Lauren has posted the link in the chat box, so you can just click on that and actually refer to it as we go through. So I believe with that out of the way, let's begin just with a brief introduction to Thrive, just the general plan itself. For some of this background. So what is Thrive Montgomery 2050? Well, it's the update to the general plan, which has not been comprehensively updated since 1969. It's the long-range vision for the future growth of the county, and really sets our work plan for the next 30 years. So the Thrive Montgomery 2050 plan will guide county-wide policies, future initiatives, land use planning, infrastructure, community amenities, and private development. It's kind of tough to encapsulate the plan into, you know, one slide or one vision, but I guess if we had to do so, it would be that in 2050, Montgomery County will be a web of complete communities connected by vibrant corridors. And What we mean by that, or by complete communities in the first place, is that they'd be individual and unique centers of neighborhood activity and urban nodes with a variety of housing types and price points located close to transit, workplaces, everyday goods and services, public amenities, and active park spaces. And by vibrant corridors, we mean comfortable, safe corridors of multimodal transportation and services, but not only, I guess, man-made urban corridors, but also natural corridors that would include parks, stream valleys, and trails, and wildlife corridors as well. Running throughout the plan are, well, I guess it's organized in several ways, and throughout the plan, what we refer to as the 3 E's, which if you're looking at this graphic, would be the 3 kind of phrases with icons in the middle of the circle: economic health, environmental resilience, and community equity. And that's kind of, those are the organizing principles of the document, and they kind of run through all of the recommendations and or goals and policies that are in the document. But structurally, it's organized by the 8 groups going around the outer circle. So that's complete communities, connectedness, diverse economies, which is obviously what we're talking about here today, safe and efficient travel, affordability and attainability, healthy and sustainable environment, diverse and adaptable growth, and design, arts, and culture. And so we'll be having community chats for each of those sections. And at the end of the presentation, I'll have the schedule of those, if any of those seem appealing to other to people that are participating in this one. So where are we in the timeline of this? Well, it's a long process. We, in late February, presented the issues report to the planning board, and that really just outlined the major issues that we're dealing with in this, confronting in this plan. Then a couple months ago in April, we presented the draft vision and goals to the planning board, and those were approved also. And we are at the point we are now is we're just about to present the draft policies and actions. So we're going from visions and goals, which are very broad, to policies and actions which are a little bit more specific about how to actually accomplish the vision and goals. But this is actually a bit of a sneak peek, because the planning board will actually see them, we'll be commenting on them tomorrow. So we get a little of a closer look, but obviously it's a long way till the finish line. So there'll be a lot of opportunities for changes and adjustments in between there, which is why we're happy to have as much feedback as we can in the meantime. So it looks like April 2021 is when we're planning to have the council review and hopefully approve the plan. So now I'm going to talk more specifically just about the economic section of the plan, and really just a broad overview of the main issues that the plan is trying to confront, the main economic issues that the plan is trying to confront. So really, there's 2 main issues, I guess I would say. One has to do with the pace of economic growth, and that it's been too slow. And the other is that the kind of economic growth, and that it's been uneven. And I'll explain what I mean by both of those. But first, I'll start talking about the pace of growth. And so anyone that I think has been following economic development or business issues in the county will probably be familiar with the idea that there is concern that the county is not as economically vibrant or growing as fast as it should be. And so just as an illustration of that, I created this chart, which I know it's a kind of a complex chart, but the point is not to focus on all of the different lines, but really just the general trend. And what this does is really just shows the, it started by taking the, ranking all of the counties in the United States by total employment in 2002 when this data series begins. And then taking Montgomery County, which is the thick black line, and stacking the 16 counties that have had more jobs that were directly above Montgomery County in employment, and then those 16 counties that were directly below Montgomery County in employment that year, and then tracking their growth all the way out to 2019. So, what you can see is just the overall trend is that most counties are growing at a faster rate than Montgomery County. We can kind of group them by or categorize them by how fast they're growing relative to Montgomery County. And so the gray counties, we can call those pulling away. They started with more employment than Montgomery County, and they actually increased their quote unquote lead over Montgomery County in overall employment. The green counties are those that are pulling ahead, and that they started below Montgomery County in terms of employment, but have since surpassed Montgomery County. The blue counties are those that are catching up. They started out with fewer jobs than Montgomery County, but they are growing at a faster rate, and a few of them are probably ready to overtake Montgomery County in the next few years. The orange counties are those that are lagging, or those that are just growing at a slower rate than Montgomery County's growth, which over this time period is about 5%. There's one county, the one in yellow, which just needed its own category because it is literally growing almost identically to Montgomery County. That's Erie County, New York, where Buffalo is. So again, this chart is meant to illustrate trends. I don't, a couple of caveats is that I don't want to, I guess, be too, let's say, dramatic about the growth problems we face, because there's definitely other types of economic growth. We're not advocating kind of growth at all costs. We don't want to compromise our core values of sustainability and equity in the pursuit of growth, and not all counties need to be on a very rapid growth trajectory. I would also say that we can both grow and be sustainable and equitable, and actually the latter should probably help growth rather than hurt it. So this is just kind of to illustrate the problems that we're facing. And so now, with that said, I'll move on to talking about the unevenness of growth, the other main problem that our economy is facing. This is just a chart that's basically one way of showing the racial income gap, and it really is. So it's really just a chart of the ratio of those households making above $100,000 to those making below $50,000 for the county overall, as well as different racial and ethnic groups. So far over on the right, we can see that 61% of non-Hispanic white households are making over $100,000 annually, while only 17% are making below $50,000. But on the left end, we can see that for Blacks and Hispanics, or for households of those categories, the pattern is really reversed, where really more households are making below $50,000 than are making above $100,000. So really, there's a lot of ways that this can be documented or quantified, but this is just one way, and this is specifically for Montgomery County. So the racial wealth or income gap is definitely a problem here that we hope to address. So for planning and for the general plan purposes, what's especially concerning to us is how this gap plays out spatially. And this is a map of just predominant racial or ethnic groups in the county. So one thing to note is that the large areas of yellow really reflect that Montgomery County is a very diverse county, and that's something that I know we at the department are proud of, and I think a lot of Montgomery residents are also proud of. It's got a quite large middle and diverse middle class, and all those yellow places are where there really is no predominant ethnic group. However, it is also apparent that to the west, it's clearly largely white, and we also know, we could show other maps to superimpose it on this, that tends to be the more affluent areas of the county, where on the east is where there are more areas of predominantly Black or Hispanic populations, and we also know that those tend to be the least affluent areas of the county. And this is something that it's historical, and it's been going on for quite a while, and we are hoping to try to reverse this with this general plan. So with that, hopefully short presentation, I wanted to now turn it over for a discussion. And one caveat before we begin the discussion is that I'd like to try to keep it focused on what this particular planning document can do. because it is a 30-year comprehensive plan, it's kind of big picture. It's not really where we're addressing specific zoning changes or even something like this, the immediate fallout and recovery from the COVID-19 crisis. Although the county is certainly doing a lot elsewhere to address that, but it is the right place if we wanted to think about how to create a community that's more resilient to future pandemics or natural or economic disasters, whatever the case may be. That's the kind of thing that this plan will address. Also, issues of taxing and spending and wealth redistribution are largely outside of the authority of the planning department. But although they're obviously very important to the economy of the county and economic development, but we can use the plan to think about how we can shape our built and regulatory environment to address these issues. And then lastly, I just want to note that the entirety of the plan, and not just the economy section, really can be thought of as an economic development strategy. We're trying to increase the quality of life and opportunities for all the residents. And doing so, we hope and we think that will attract and retain new people and help plug previously marginalized people and communities into this new economy that we're trying to create. So with that, I'd like to turn it over to you all, the participants, to hear your comments and suggestions or anything that you'd like to see addressed. So I will, I think I'll stop sharing this for now, and I can start if anyone wants to refer to it so that I can maybe pay more attention to what's going on outside.
Thanks, Ben. That looks good. So we do have a couple of questions coming in on the chat. Would you like me to read them, and then that way people can listen if they're calling in? There's a few, some more specific than others. So I'll just throw a couple at you first, let you talk, and then ask the others.
Sure.
So one question says, I was really excited to see multiple references to a land value capture / tax in the draft policies and actions, including in the diverse economy section. Is there a difference between land value capture and land value tax? So maybe you could just talk a little bit about what that is, what they saw in the policies and actions.
Yes, I think yes and no. I think it depends on who's talking about the land value capture and the land value tax. I will. I don't know how to do this, but there's actually a very good article in Strong Towns. I don't know if you've been to that website about this exact question. Really, land value tax is something that could fall under the purview of a land value capture. I mean, a land value tax is a way of doing land value capture, and so a land value tax specifically it's really just taxing the value of land at a much greater rate or instead of the buildings on a land. And that it's kind of there's a lot to that. It's kind of gets a little wonky, but really it's meant to increase density and reduce sprawl and really allow the public to recoup the value that they've created through funding infrastructure like transit that really increases property values around that sort of investment, and also it's also a way of reducing housing costs. And another thing about this, so we've definitely got that phrasing in there. Just to I think that with this general plan, we're kind of laying the groundwork to explore those things. I don't think that the plan itself will be. We're not necessarily advocating that at this point. We're advocating looking more into that with this general plan.
Great. Okay, let's go on to the next one. I think this also references the policies and actions. It says, what would be included in an employment growth and access functional plan? Our functional policy division does functional plans for the entire county. What might it look like?
That's a great question. probably what we would want to study in something like that is, as Corinne said, functional plans really are more kinds of plans that encompass the entire county rather than just one specific area. So for example, something that it could measure is really just like where for any, any given part in the county, how many jobs can the people there access via transit, realistically. We could quantify that. We could quantify what types of land we have, let's say, for some of our emerging sectors. So for example, if we're thinking about building up biomanufacturing, since we already have a bit of that, and we have the pharmaceutical industry, do we have the right kind of land to accommodate that? So I think that's the kind of that's probably the kind of material that a functional employment and access plan would include. Does that
okay, great.
Work? I can always follow if there's follow-up questions. I'm happy to,
right. Yeah. If any question answers have follow-up questions, feel free to raise your hand or type in the chat, and I will read them aloud as well. So I'm going to move on to the next question in my purview here. And it says, how can we make sure that labor markets are taken into account when we're considering all planning decisions? Maybe that's something that is considered outside of the range of planning decisions, but maybe we should consider.
Yeah, well, I think, I think part of what I said for the last answer, because it depends on what you think of as a labor market, and, and kind of the national, from a national perspective, a labor market is essentially the entire DC, Maryland, Virginia, metro area. Realistically, we know that's not true. That we know that if there's very few people who are going to commute to the from one end of the metro to the other. So in a sense, we could probably define our own labor markets and kind of see whether the jobs, like what would be a viable labor market for, let's say, the Greater Seneca Life Sciences Corridor, which, if you're not familiar, that's up near where the NIST campus is, just west, kind of northwest of Rockville, west of Gaithersburg, where we have a lot of life sciences activity. So for example, how many people, what's the labor market for there? I mean, where are people coming from, and what's the kind of reach for commuting? And maybe how can we expand that so that we can get more people into that area more easily without having to use a single occupancy vehicle, and possibly with options to transit. So I think, so that's one. I mean, I think that's the way that I think about taking labor, like kind of more of a micro view of labor market at the county level. I hope I'm answering the question correctly, or with what the person had in the person who asked it had in mind. And if anyone has anything to add, then.
And I'll just also invite the other participants who are project managers on the general plan, Carrie McCarthy and Khalid Afzal. If you guys want to chime in, just feel free to let me know, or just go ahead.
Yes, and guests, please feel free to chime in and ask follow-up questions or debate me or whatever you'd like to do. I'm happy to address that.
Okay. Well, seeing no follow-up questions on that particular question just yet, let's go to the next one. This is a little more specific. It says, there were no associated actions in the goals, policy, and actions for preserving and expanding minority-owned small businesses and also international neighborhood retail. So what actions can the county take to move this policy forward to assist those sectors?
That I actually am really good you brought this up. There is, I think we do need more in this area. It's actually easy to miss. Policy 3.2.3, if you can follow along, is the policy says to preserve and expand minority-owned small businesses and international and neighborhood retail. enhance efforts to understand and address barriers to business ownership and expansion of these types of businesses. So I think in thinking about how to make policies and actions about this issue, which I agree is something that we really need to do, especially in the wake of COVID-19, we kind of were realizing that we may not understand enough about these businesses and all the different types of them to really write a good policy or action at the moment, which is why this one, and actually this is true for a lot of the policies in this chapter, kind of recommends further study. Because I think that for minority-owned businesses, for international businesses, and just small businesses in general, they're so diverse, and based on the ownership and the type of business they have such different needs that I think at this point, recommending a specific policy or some sort of one size fits all one to help them may be a little bit premature. But that being said, I would actually love to hear if any of the participants, you can do it now or you can do it offline. I'm going to give you my contact information. I'd love to hear recommendations for what we could add to that.
I'll also just jump in to add that we're currently conducting, we're about to launch an international retail study that's going to look specifically at these issues, and we'll have some tangible recommendations that it builds on work that we had some students do looking at Long Branch. So we've selected a consultant, and that project will probably start in July, and we're also going to look at Silver Spring, Wheaton, and Tacoma Langley.
Great. Let's go on to our last chat box question. This says, how do the goals and vision translate to a typical resident? How would you describe to a community member on what to expect? More X, less Y, etc.
Okay. Good question. I think that, so one of the main things that I think what to expect would probably be, and this is true not just for the economy section, but I think for the whole plan, is that more good urbanism. I mean, I think we probably density will be part of it, and that's there is an economic component to that. It's actually, it would be there's a fiscal reason for that, in that it will help make the county fiscally more sustainable with infrastructure that can be affordable in the long term. So I would definitely say that that's probably a direction that this county is going. Less sprawling development, more dense urban development. I would really like to have people expect better transit options. Again, and a lot of that's outside of the scope of this particular section of the plan, although related to that in this section, what we I think is one of the really keystones of the economy section, if I can find it, is actions 3.2.322A and 322B. 322A is a one-seat transit service from major employment centers to at least one of 3 international airports in the region. And then the other, its sister action is to also expand transit between employment centers within the county. Like, for example, Silver Spring and Rockville could use probably a better direct route, and just to get to all the major employment centers within the county. And also, I think I'm confusing, there is, in a different section, action 3.71C, actually, I guess would be another sister action to these 2 actions, which would be to also expand these connections to major business centers outside of the county. So I think those would be really key parts of the economic section of this plan that may be something tangible that residents could actually see and expect. Also, I'll just highlight one more. I think there's more than this, but I don't want to take too much time on this one. But I think we'd like to see, and hopefully the residents would like to see and will see this, that the physical integration of higher education campuses into the county. So for example, Montgomery College and the universities at Shady Grove are part of an urban community. Parts of them are not quite as integrated or kind of seamlessly as maybe as would be ideal to kind of really benefit from the what they can offer to a community. So I think we'll hopefully see more of that. Yeah, I think I'll leave it there.
Sorry, Ben, we got one more question that came
Okay.
in. I think this refers to your first slide about the peer counties. And it
Sure.
says, is there a trend in which counties are gaining or lagging?
Let me share that back with you and let me explain, or let me tell you what that trend is. Whoopsies. Sorry, technical difficulties here. Now, where did my, sure this is it. Oh, that's here. I'm just going to leave it on. I think it'll be easier and quicker if I just leave it on the actual. I know you can all see the PowerPoint without in presenter mode, but so and this is actually a really important point, and I'm glad this was brought up. And this is again why I caution against being overly alarmist about Montgomery's growth. So the reason that if you can see where my mouse is, can everyone see my mouse? Can you nod if you can see my mouse? Okay. The bottom line here, this is Wake County, North Carolina, that goes up like this and pulls way ahead of Montgomery County. That's where Raleigh is. The research triangle is there. They're a different county than they're kind of a competitor, I would say, in certain ways. As much as I don't like to think about counties as competing with each other, the reality is that we do. They have a lot of a large pharmaceutical industry, and so in a lot of ways they do compete with us. But they started at this period, 2002, at a much lower level of development than Montgomery County. By the time we got to this data series here, Montgomery County had already grown significantly and had been mostly built out. And this is true of a lot of what we may call Sunbelt states, places in the South and the Mountain West that have grown more rapidly in the last several decades. So that is a lot of what the growth on the rapidly growing counties are. And clearly Montgomery County, we wouldn't expect to be in the same league as those counties. So that's kind of it. There's some of the counties that are kind of similar to Montgomery County. We noticed are Fairfield County, Connecticut, Westchester County, New York, Bergen County, New Jersey, and these are all what were essentially bedroom communities for a very large city in a large metropolitan area. And they're also kind of growing slowly because they had matured at about the same time that Montgomery County did, but they're also fairly stable. So I would say those are some of the main, the lagging communities tend to be Rust Belt communities. Milwaukee County, Wisconsin is one of them. So I would say those are the main trends, and there's definitely room for Montgomery County to grow. There's a few similar counties that are doing better than Montgomery County, but again, it's not it's not the only thing to look at, and there's context that's involved. So I'll get rid of this. Hopefully that also answers.
Great. All right, well, we can continue with some other questions that didn't come through the chat bank. If you're game, or are there any follow-up questions from the participants or the experts on staff? No?
I'll chime in with a question to give the participants a little bit more time to think. So we have a lot of emphasis on equity in the plan. How do we make sure the economy has opportunities for all people?
Yeah, so I think that, let me just find I'm still getting used to the spaces where everything is in the plan, so I am scrolling to it. So goal 3.3 is really where we hone in on this equity question. Oh, and so before I even start this, I do want to say, again, this is something that I'd really love if any of the participants listening have ideas to send now or later. I'd love more concrete strategies that we could include here, because I don't think any of us want the plan to just say that we're going to increase equity, but not have any real way any embedded in the plan, or nothing with teeth to actually do that. But if you look at goal point 3.3, most of the policies and actions in here are really about that. So prioritize job access and job generation and land use planning. This is the first policy under this goal, including development review process, master planning, and functional planning. So really, this is just saying that when we do planning, our typical planning, we're really gonna make sure that we've always got an employment focus. So that's employment, that's making sure we have enough space in the areas for employment, and also making sure that the residents of those areas can access enough jobs. And certainly we'll be doing that with equity in mind. The next policy, I think, even more explicitly gets at this, where we're really just kind of working with, and again, we're not kind of public schools and workforce development is a bit outside of our purview, but we really feel like we can support these agencies. So we'd like to, action 3.3.2 is an example of where we could conduct an economic equity study. So we could really rather, zero in a little bit more than just these kind of overall graphs and charts that I've showed you in the presentation, to see exactly what levels of equity we have and specifically what the barriers are. We know broadly that transportation is a problem, and we know that there's education inequities geographically in the county, but I think we need to know a little bit more about it to really be able to address these, especially in a way that the planning department can. And I think one of the advantages of doing a study like this would be, which it says in the policy, is to set measurable targets and timelines so that we could so that we could actually do it. Because I think unless you are able to measure things and actually set tangible goals, it's probably going to be difficult to do that. The next action, 3.3.2b, is an inclusive employment and innovation strategy. And that's where we want to try to identify the places where Montgomery County has a lot of competitive industries. I mean, the pharmaceutical industry, we've got some corporate headquarters, and what we'd like to do is get the communities and the people that have really not quite had access to jobs in those industries, to get them really plugged in and into a career pipeline in those industries, and to kind of see where those options are, and work with education and educational institutions and workforce development to get people plugged into those. And again, I think that's just something that needs more, we need to increase our knowledge on those. So one other thing regarding that I want to talk about is goal 3.4, which is about preserving land for production, distribution, and repair. And this is really just industrial land. And while Montgomery County isn't really a manufacturing hub, nor really was ever much of one, there's still a lot of industrial uses that go on in the county that are vital to just our everyday lives in the county, and also that also happen to have pretty decent kind of middle income jobs for people that may not have an advanced degree. And that is something that we really need to kind of pay attention to. I think we need to modernize how we think of it and which kind of industries Montgomery County really has in that fall into that category, and make sure that we've got the land uses that can accommodate those. So is that just, and again, I'll leave it at that. And unless anyone else wants to jump in.
There's sort of a related follow-up question here. It says, has staff been collaborating with WorkSource Montgomery and MCEDC?
Yes, we collaborate regularly with MCEDC, quite a bit actually. We have a few projects going on, and we've, they're looped in with every iteration of the plan. We do have, just want to point out that basically our first policy, and I just scrolled way too far, let me find it, but at any rate, our first policy is basically about supporting MCEDC. Well, we've called it County Economic Development Agencies, which it should include MCEDC and the County Executive Office in aligning our planning processes with their economic goals. I think that's kind of one of our main cornerstones of this plan, that we really need to be involved in and engaged with the economic development community. And we actually, I don't know if anyone's from WorkSource Montgomery, we had tried to get, we almost met with WorkSource Montgomery. Some things fell through, and then COVID hit, and everyone's from home. It's on my list to get a meeting with WorkSource Montgomery, and we will absolutely be talking to them before long, and making sure they have some input in this plan.
Okay, well, we have a couple more questions that we can go through that just came in. One includes a couple of comments if you want to follow up with any comment. Sure. It says Research Triangle Park development is extremely spread out and sprawling. Mm-hmm. That's just a comment.
You're right, it is.
Urbanism and sort of our goals around that kind of development and how we relate to land use with our economic goals. There's also a question that says, is rapid economic growth a goal?
Huh, good question. Well, first, if you're talking about the Research Triangle in North Carolina, it's a very 1960s model of development, and it actually has been very successful, but that is not the model that we're looking at. We envision a much more compact and dense type of innovation district, I guess, for lack of a better word. That's the kind of space that we'd be planning for. So I'm sorry. What was the? Now I've forgotten the second comment that I was supposed to. Growth.
I'll just chime in about Research Triangle Park real quick. They've actually also realized the same challenges we have of that they need to become more urban in order to continue to grow and support economic development. So they've had a major master plan that looks at how to urbanize the park and incorporate more transit, et cetera. So they're dealing with a lot of similar challenges to us.
Yeah. So thanks, Carrie. So the next question was about is rapid growth a goal? I don't think so. Nowhere, I don't believe this is, we stated, I don't think we use the word rapid, except for transit. I personally don't think that we need to feel too much pressure to go rapidly. That often doesn't go well. I think, and I guess it depends on your definition of rapid. I think we need to add more jobs, more faster than we have done in the last few decades. But whether that would fall into somebody's definition of rapid, I'm not so sure. I think the right kind of growth is more important. That it should be sustainable, and that it that we're growing in the ways that are going to be valuable in a 21st century economy. That we're producing we're making the right kind of innovations, that we're producing the right kind of products and services that the world needs. And I don't think we should be so concerned about the exact number of jobs that we've gained or lost every year.
Great. Well, let's go on to a sort of more specific policy or even action question. It mentions the idea of a commercial MPDU program as opposed to a residential one. Is that something that's being studied or could be studied to help small businesses or for small business protection?
That's a great, I am not aware. It very well may be being studied.
That's a tactic we're looking at as part of the international retail study in terms of sort of set-asides and how those work. So, and Jane, I'm happy to put you in touch with Todd Foley-King, who's going to be the project manager for that study, and can talk a lot more about small businesses. Sorry to interrupt you, Ben. I had an answer.
No, great. You obviously answered that way better than I could have. So, yeah, it's a great idea. Yeah.
And then there's another related suggestion. What about flexibly sized commercial spaces? Those might also be beneficial for small businesses. Yeah. A lot of existing commercial spaces are too big, and that makes them very expensive. Could these be embraced through zoning or some other regulation?
I have a feeling that there's a similar answer to what Carrie just gave. Is that something that's also being looked at in the international retail? And if not, I have a follow-up to that.
Exactly. There's a whole plethora of recommendations that came up during the first round, and the next study will really refine them. And it also speaks to that's like a very narrow tactical policy that's a little too specific for the scope of the general plan. So yeah, definitely we're very interested in small businesses and are doing these other parallel studies to provide some more shorter term tactics to implement.
And the diverse and adaptable growth chapter may also, I mean, a lot of that is about being having a framework to be able to be flexible in that way when new types of businesses or types of land uses may emerge, so that we're not locked into specific zoning that that's really not flexible. So that going over that chapter and possibly even going to that chat may help answer some of those questions or help everybody understand how that might work in 30 years in the county.
How about a broad overarching question here, Ben?
Sure.
What is the most important thing we can do to increase the prosperity of our county residents over the next 30 years, which is the span of the general plan?
Well, I have my kind of favorite policies, but I would say that or what I think will have the most impact, but I don't want to, that would be me predicting things, and I'm probably not good at that. But I really do think that increasing equity and opportunity, I think that should be seen as a driver of economic growth and not something we just have to put up with because it's a value. So I really think that would probably be the main thing. And I also think that just thinking, and actually I think Corinne, you coined this term, but planning in a job aware manner. I think that we need to really just kind of reinforce that as we're planning, that we need to be plugged into the economic development community and all of the things that they have going on, and making sure that when we're planning, we've got that in mind. And I think that would go a long way.
Cool. Thanks, Ben. We only have a couple more minutes left. Would you like a couple more questions, or do you want to?
Maybe you want to do. Sorry, went out there. We can just do maybe one more question, and then I can just kind of close it. Give the contact information and the rest of the
So we talked about small businesses and employment, but what about encouraging entrepreneurship specifically and innovation? What can we do?
Yeah.
We know that's important for growth and development. What can we do to spur or encourage that?
Yeah, so a lot of our, and again, this is one that I'd love to hear suggestions from the public for. Goal 3.5, we really set out that we'd like to be leading in innovation entrepreneurship. We should be in the kind of same strata we feel as places like Boston and the Bay Area. So one of the things, so action 3.5.1A is to conduct a regional innovation capacity and connectivity study to identify innovation assets in the region. Again, I think our economic development partners are working on similar things. And this could certainly be something we do in partnership with them. But the next policy goes on to talk about our partnership with federal agencies. And so federal agencies, I think blessing and curse is a very strong, it's probably not the right word, but it's great that we have, like, for example, NIH, but obviously the problem with that, and this relates to the slow growth, it's very stable, it's great set of jobs, but it doesn't grow very much, at least not anymore. And it's very difficult to unlock the innovative potential of that just because of the way that federal laboratories are structured, whereas universities, public or private, have a lot more leeway in commercializing the innovations that come out of them. So so I think, one is we'd certainly like to help unlock that innovative potential in our federal laboratories, but also we are right down the road from the University of Maryland, and we can think about possibly expanding the innovative capacity through in other ways that and by having more of a public or private, possibly non-federal research presence in the county, and just kind of building up the ecosystem that would promote those types of innovations.
Cool, sounds good. All right, well, we are nearing the end of our chat session here with about 4 or 5 more minutes. So if you just want to tell people where they can get more information or access the actions and policies that we are now preparing.
Yeah, I'm going to share my screen again with you all so that I can finish the presentation. So first of all, thank you everyone. Those were great questions and comments. Tomorrow, as I mentioned, is the draft policies and actions. The document that you've been linked to will be presented to the planning board. I think it's about 2 o'clock is when it's scheduled. You can send written testimony or virtual visual testimony to the addresses there. You can sign up for the Thrive Montgomery 2050 e-letter. Always send your comments to any of those methods listed. And there are also almost all of the other community chats are left. So here's the schedule. I'm sure this schedule is available in elsewhere, but the next one will be Healthy Communities. So that's a week from today from 7 to 8. And then lastly, you have, just wanted to give my contact information, and so that about wraps it up. And I really appreciate everybody. Thank you to the staff here for moderating this, and thank you for everyone that participated. And those were great comments, and we'll definitely be thinking more about them.